very much. And it will be very hard, actually, to flash you with some new stuff, because actually you did a very great job and you have new results, whereas my results are old results. And I just thought that actually not every one of you has already heard about this stuff. And so I must admit, the research is 10 years old. That's really, really old, right? But actually, on the other hand, you know, it might be still true, because actually mathematicians didn't make a big change, though, if they didn't switch to formalization. Okay, so maybe it's still worthwhile. Okay, so now I was interested in search interfaces for real mathematicians, so professional mathematicians. And basically, I was not interested, for example, in really finding out what they were using. Because, you know, then I would ask people, they would tell me, great research, yes. Okay, so no good question. I also was not interested, actually, how often mathematicians search. That was also boring. Neither was I interested in which search engines are really preferred or what kind of interfaces were preferred, because I really am into the why of things. And so that was what I really wanted to understand. So what is mathematical search really all about? And that was the question with which I started. Now, when I thought then, okay, how can I find that possibly out? It turned out it's not that easy. So you could observe them. Yeah. Observe, I mean, that wouldn't be very interesting. So just observation was not actually a good alternative. Maybe actually something like contextual inquiry, where you actually, whenever you do not understand something, then you ask them what they are doing. That maybe. But actually, on the other hand, I decided to first have some few interviews with mathematicians. And that was really frustrating, really, because they always wanted to tell me what they thought I should hear. Not what the facts were about, but actually what they really wanted to get across to me. So, because they have messages and they have a plan and so on. So basically, interviewing is really not such a good method, I found out, with mathematicians. Okay, so, yeah, I don't know if you all also have such, such experiences, but I found it really hard and frustrating, actually. So then I could have gone then for close observation, and a close observation method is eye tracking, where you follow actually the eye movements and actually understand, where their attention is and what they are interested in and so on. And actually, you can get very nice results with such close observation. So I did that, but that's just a reminder, because some of you have already seen this result because I already presented here. But actually, with the eye tracker, we observed how people looked at long formulae. And interestingly, the people who were not interested in math, they started on the left-hand side. So they started somewhere and then directly went to the left-hand side. And the next movement was to go across the formula, and start again when they realized they didn't understand it. So basically, they read formulae like text. That was really amazing, but even more amazing was that then the math people really did it differently. They really followed the operator tree. So they traversed the operator tree, and so they were not interested here in the right-hand part of the formula before they had understood at least enough on the left-hand side. So that was a valuable result actually. So basically there is a visual structure which you are not taught in school, but which you have to implicitly learn. And so Ursula talked about math practices, and that's actually one math practice, math literacy. You need to learn how to read specific math expressions. Okay, and actually when I came here, I wanted to learn how formalization literacy works out, but many of you didn't have enough time for doing my eye tracking stuff, and so I actually retracted from that. So, but again, we want to talk about math search interfaces. I just wanted to give you an example for what close observation might mean. Okay, and then yes?
So, how robust are the eye tracking results with respect to different ways of typesetting the formula?
So actually we also did, for example, an equation system, a very, very simple equation system. And there we could also directly observe that actually math people look at the operators first. So the plus and the equation sign and so on. And the math people, they start out reading an equation system like an image in the middle. Then they do not see anything important with their peripheral vision, and so they start again to read it like text. And actually, you said how robust the results were. So this is just an example by one participant, but we had 30 participants, and actually, in most cases, it was really the operator tree. And actually, MathML is a wonderful HTML publication format because it is built up via the operator tree. So you can really support this math reading.
I can see, I'm just trying to understand. So the numbers, are they the order in which they were looking at?
Yeah.
And the size of the blob means how long they were? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So the bigger the blob, actually the longer the fixation lasted. So fixation meaning looking at one spot.
So the operators were the things that were fixating on the most?
So not the most, no, because actually you are trained to recognize the operators. Okay, so it's just a glance, but actually in another study we even left out in formulae most part of the formulae as white boxes. And people were just glancing at the right, correct positions, even though there was nothing. Okay, but that's just such an example, or an example for close observation. Now, in this study, which I would like to report about, I found then a method which I found really very interesting, namely repertory grid interviews. I know, it's a little bit leading, right? But actually, the mathematicians were really, I had to drive them, and it was really so exhausting for the participants, this method, that they did not think about, guiding me in a certain direction. And so I got real results, I think, at least. Okay, so what did I do? Or what is this repertory grid technique or interview? Actually, for doing such an experiment, you need stimuli, visual stimuli. And I chose a set of math search interfaces, which I had asked them before about. Okay, so I had some information there, and I go into that. But I would like to point out that I not only included the digital search interfaces, but also, you know, my library as a stimulus or my office, because that's also a math search interface, or my colleagues, right? But those were just the physical ones, and here are the original ones which I used. I'll explain more about it. But I was actually, at that point in time, I was employed by the Zentralblatt Math, and so I naturally had to include the Zentralblatt Math interfaces. And they had, you know, this was the old one, where you could put in the query here, and actually you could also, so you had several options what to do, but no one actually discovered what you could do there. That was now the new one, and it looked much more modern. Actually, it looked like Google, without being Google, which turned out mathematicians realized. And if something looks like Google, people expect it to work like Google, and they are disappointed if it doesn't work that way. Okay. Then I also used the mathematical reviews, the American counterpart for the Zentralblatt, and you can see that the mathematical reviews basically have an extended search interface where you can really say what you want semantically. Okay, what else? At that time, ResearchGate was something new, and actually they had the slogan "Find and Share," and specifically mathematicians were publishing there, actually quite a lot. Okay, and I couldn't resist, because I looked it up whether, you know, I find something interesting on ResearchGate, and I found this very nice and sweet picture. Okay, but that's, you know, just on a side note. Okay, so Math Overflow is still being used very much, that as an interface. Then Math Web Search or Formula Search, where you can actually look for LaTeX or for math expressions in LaTeX, and you can use query variables, so the ones which can be substituted. And at the same time, you would see whether you had made a mistake in your LaTeX and so on. That was another one. And one which I really like, because I do like colors quite a lot, that's the math subject classification map. So actually all the different MSCs can be grouped, and actually based on a cluster analysis, you know, it was just mapped with OpenStreetMap. Okay, and yeah, I wanted to see whether, you know...
So is that 2020 or 2010? The MSC, because they changed, right?
Yeah, but that's actually the latest, or not true, probably 2010. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but, you know, for my study, it was actually not really important whether it was actual. Okay, and I think one of the last ones is this virtuelle Fachbibliothek Math, Viva Math. There actually you could type in some name of a mathematician, and then you would get some genealogy. This word, I don't... Genealogy? You can, maybe I show it. I can't pronounce it, okay?
Genealogy, yeah.
I can't do it. I have to train that. Okay, but anyway, and then you would see some pictures of, you know, Oberwolfach, the dark stool of mathematicians, and so on, and it was more social. Okay, today actually it changed its name, but it still existed. Okay, a very small one, which is offered on Archive and was offered on Archive. It was quite new then, if I remember correctly, called Ketchup, where you could see, you know, what kind of new articles are there and differentiate there. And what is missing, you might know that, I mean, 2014, there was no ChatGPT yet as an interface. I would like to point out that personally, I consider ChatGPT, or the revolution with ChatGPT is not the LLMs. Actually, they were around much longer. But the interface is really the revolution, and I would think that's more like a printing press invention, because actually you can talk with a machine. And that was actually the great thing, but I couldn't, I mean, it was not yet existent, so I couldn't use that, but it would have been interesting. You said, right, 3 + 2 × 2 is 7. Yeah, if your wife or your husband is not telling you otherwise. Okay, so now back to the repertory grid interview. How does it work, and why is it so exhausting? And why does it really trigger, let's say, honest replies? So actually, these elements, 3 of them, the interviewee chose at every round, and then he or she had to decide, okay, which is different, or which 2 of them look the same or seem to be very similar, and which looks different. And then give that a name. That is, okay, why are they similar? In which aspect are they similar? Write that down. And actually, in which respect does the third element look dissimilar? And then you had to evaluate your constructs. Those are called constructs. I think on a scale from 1 to 7 for all presented elements. Okay, and now you have to imagine, okay, the first one is easy. But then, okay, why? I mean, you know, yeah, that gives me an overview, but in what respect is it dissimilar? And if you combine, let's say, my office with ResearchGate or so, it is really hard work for them. But they came up actually with quite an amount of constructs. So the pure research mathematicians, they created 50 constructs, and each of them basically on average 4.5. The info-service mathematicians, meaning basically Zentralblatt mathematicians, which considered themselves to be real mathematicians. So I couldn't tell them that I did make this difference. But, okay, we'll see that was obvious, though. So 28 constructs, and you can see the numbers, and even 6 non-mathematicians. Okay. And then I did some analysis, so meaning a process analysis to basically find a consensus grid, meaning that the different constructs were represented by, I think, something like 8 artificial constructs, and then actually on them the principal component analysis was done, and so on and so on. But actually that's now the interesting part.
So how many of these did you do? Like, did you do like all 3, choose however many there were?
No, actually they had to decide, and when they looked at all the elements, and when they thought, no, this is now really everything what I know about these elements. I can't do it any longer. Ask Florian about the experience, I can tell you. It's really exhausting. Okay. Yeah, and then you can visualize it, and you can see all the different elements can be set in a plane with the principal components, the first and the second one as dimensions. And I will use that in the following. And you can do some more analysis there with the elements and the constructs, depending on what we are interested in. And then it gets really more or obviously interesting, because now you have this Y plot of all the elements, but now you have in the third dimension, you have all the constructs. And then you can actually see, you know, the catch-up, for example, is inflexible and confusing. Okay, and the central mass nu is relevance enhancement. You know, some of their constructs. So I didn't create these constructs; they were created by the participants. Okay. And then you can provide some other, so I come back to that. I just would like to show you, you know, what kind of data you can generate with that. And actually with cluster analysis, you can also go for other visualizations. And here, for example, in a dendrogram, here we have 3 main clusters, and actually we can look at these clusters, and we can even look at subclusters here. And these constructs, I said at the beginning, I built a consensus grid with actually grids which are, or with dimensional constructs which represent the concrete constructs. They are, so to speak, average of the constructs which resemble the real constructs very closely. And I renamed the constructs depending on which group actually they were created by. Okay, and then now I differentiated the participants in these groups. And for example, the first cluster was, we can see that here, was actually populated by all kinds of people from my participants. But the second cluster actually was math specific. And so I called this the math cluster. Then in the third, we looked at the I looked at the subclusters. And again, this was mixed. This was rather orange, so the non-math people the constructs were very similar, and this was, no math. Actually, we could basically say, okay, we had a shared cluster, a really concrete math cluster, and at least not no math cluster. Okay, and now, if we have analyzed that, and now we look at the distribution of these consensus constructs, we can see the infomath people really were distributed everywhere on the clusters. The math people were all focused on the second cluster, and the no-math people were also concentrated. So there was something special about these yellow clusters. And then I had yet another look at the ranking of these constructs, and these were the let's say, the interesting ones. And so now I went back and just, marked them a little bit so that we can maybe see something. So here we have the constructs which were considered to be pure math constructs. So they were measured in some way. So, and actually, which way? We could look now here at the different concrete values of the abstract constructs. And here we can see, for example, the catch-up. I already said that inflexible and confusing, and here it is about low quality management, context-free search, and so on and so on. And so there I looked very closely, and by doing that, this were before that, the abstract constructs, and then I got some meaning because I could see what the concrete constructs actually said. And here, for example, I could see, okay, the relevance of results driven by user was very important for mathematicians, and so on. That's just basically explaining to you how I, let's say, got the final interpretation then. Okay. I could also do that not with respect to the elements, but with respect to, not with respect to the constructs, but with the elements. And here I just considered now the clusters for the mathematically oriented people and the not mathematically oriented participants. And we can see just by the colors it is different. Okay, so they do have different constructs, let's say, for the different elements. You can see, for example, we have here for the math people, we have colleagues grouped with office, grouped with math overflow, grouped with ResearchGate. Whereas, for example, here, they you can see that my colleagues, my library, my office, all physical, for example. We also have some similarities here, like that the yellow ones are basically in one cluster.
But Andrea, you have a problem with that, right? Because lots of mathematicians I know have no access to the Zendro-Blatt math. The original one, the old one, because...
Oh, but actually I just gave them pictures of that, so they actually, we could look it up again. So if they said they don't know it, then...
It's not a question of not knowing, it's not having access, right? Because it was paid, and lots of people that I know, I mean, I personally cannot look at this stupid stuff, because, the company would have to pay for it.
You can see the abstracts. You don't see the papers, but the abstracts...
Yeah, but then what's the point, right? You kind of look at the abstracts and you can't, you know that you'll find something that you won't be able to read. So, it just makes you cross instead of...
That's a discussion about the business model of Zentralblatt. I was just interested in the search interfaces. Okay, actually, because I'm running out of time, I just would like to show you now the patterns actually which came up. And I think they are actually the most interesting thing here. Basically, that mathematicians do not assess math search interfaces based on familiarity. So, for example, this MSC map, actually, it was pretty well received by mathematicians. It doesn't have to be blackboard or whiteboard. I know they love their blackboard, but they can also switch to whiteboards. It's not that big a problem for mathematicians. So familiarity. Then community. So mathematicians very much trust human and community resources. And actually more than other communities. So you could see that the in-between math people, the Zentralblatt people, actually did not so much base their search on that. It became very clear that actually math people really want to find something. They do not want to browse, with a goal in mind, or to serve, just, to get entertained or so. And also not so much to solve, because they thought they solved in their head. Okay, so they wanted to find with math search interfaces. Sometimes, people say mathematicians are not social. And I do believe that is true, but they like social tools. They do trust in humans and community, and basically they collaborate and exchange feedback. That's actually you can even call that a mathematical practice. So, for example, math overflow was very much accepted, but ResearchGate, not yet, at least at that point in time. Mathematicians also want to use their search interface as a medium. That's actually based on a notion by Marshall McLuhan, the medium as extension of man, like an arm. So if they use something, then they are willing to, to get empowered by it, but actually they are also willing to learn it. Okay, and function is more important than form, very much so. The outcome is more important than the input. So the input can be complicated and it doesn't have to be ChatGPT. Mathematicians their acceptance level is much lower than that. For example, they learn LaTeX. Everyone learns LaTeX to produce not so ugly formulae like this one, but actually, the input is not that important, the output is. And I already mentioned that they want to be empowered in their search process. And that means if you think about searching, that means you build up search plans. Okay, and if you can support them in creating their own search plans, then actually that is a great plus. The transparency, how can I explain the results? It doesn't have to be high recall and high precision and so on, but I have to know what I expect from the data, and then I can work with that. And the last one here is really that they need to find something meaningful in the results. It doesn't have to be, a meaningful search result. Not everything has to be meaningful, but they have to understand what kind of meaning they can take from it. So, and just a very short remark here. Now, I also could differentiate the data between the young mathematicians and the older mathematicians. And you can already see here there are differences. And actually, I just sum it up here. What they thought 10 years ago, that basically that they thought, okay, the young ones thought Google really is an important search machine, search engine. And for that, actually, they pointed to the Google design factor. And that is aesthetics of simplicity turns into an ethics of simplicity. So you heard among designers, you heard a lot about minimalism. But that's not what they meant here. It's really the ethics of simplicity, that you only want to see what you need. Okay, and whether it was presented in a minimal way was not that important. Also, Google rewards openness, the effects of the long tail, they are all well known with Google, that you even get those results. And I remember when I talked with Jeremy 2 weeks ago, actually he really would to have some search function where you get the long tail. It's not only to find the most used results, but actually here he wants to find it all, even those ones. Okay, actually physicality was interpreted as outdatedness, and I can observe that now as well. That's not any longer important. The social harvesting of information turned, or what they want, that it turns into a networked harvesting of information. So that's a subtle change, and I think we can see that with Zulip and all these elements right now. Okay, and that's actually my conclusion. I wanted to phrase it very, very simply. in a simple way, namely that if you create mathematical search interfaces, it's really not that important how it looks, but actually what it offers. And the disambiguation features, so that the mathematicians themselves can decide on their own search plan. That's actually the crucial point, so that they can use the tool in a very autonomous way. And actually, I think LLMs might help a lot because they provide so much new information, but it doesn't have to be the interface in the form of ChatGPT. So it's not about the conversational property there, but it is about fine-tuning a search, like in ChatGPT. That's actually the really great thing which I would assess now. Okay, and that's it. Thank you very much.